Hello and welcome. My name is Kushal Shah and I'm here with my friend and co-host Ayush Pranam. You are listening to Nails and Hammers, a podcast where we talk to people about their journeys and understand how they take decisions and solve different problems. Our guest for today is Bharat Sundaresan, who is a cricket writer at Crickbuzz. We talk about what got Bharat into cricket journalism, how he observes cricketers and writes his articles, his interactions with Patrick Patterson, and finally we talk about his book on the Indian legend MS Dhoni. We hope you enjoy this episode as much as we did, and it's time to listen and learn. Hi Bharat, welcome to the Nails and Hammers podcast.
Hello, thank you, thanks. I
So,
mean, I'm
so
sure every guest of yours has asked you why it's called Nails and Hammers, so I won't bother you too much about it, even though I am curious.
I mean,
Go
we
for it,
can just
Kushal.
share a bit about it. So what we think is that like every problem is like a nail, right? And to solve different problems, you need different hammers. So if you just have one hammer, and if you think like an engineer, then so you'll think of everything in terms of problem solving. But if you think of what an author, what a writer would look at things, maybe you can develop a different mental model. So that's the whole purpose behind nails and hammers.
Very deep here. Yeah, that's very good. Yeah, that's a good way of looking at it. Yeah. True. No, I mean,
Uh,
when you think nails and hammers, people just think, yeah, the final nail and the final hammer. So maybe that also plays a part in it as well. I'm sure.
So, I want to start from the very beginning. Can you share a bit with us about where did you grow up and where all did you study?
Oh yeah. So I mean, I grew up in Bombay. I was born in Ghatkopar. I'm very proud to be from Ghatkopar. In fact, when people ask me now, they call you NRI and all. I always tell them, no. I'll always be an NRG. I'm like my name is Bharat, which is what another name for India in a way. But
Yeah.
Ghatkopar is what, like it's always closest to my heart. So my mother tongue is Tamil, though nobody except my mother believes that I speak good Tamil. I'm very proud of it, but nobody. Unfortunately, no Tamil person thinks I know Tamil,
Yep.
which I don't buy into. So I try singing songs and all to them, but yeah, I can't win them over. Not yet. And yeah, I grew up in, like I said, in Ghatkopar. I went to school not too far from there, a school called Fatima High School. And then I did my junior college in science, like a good South Indian should, at the South Indian Education Society. And then I dabbled a little bit with engineering. Uh, very close to home. And yeah, I mean, that was literally my childhood. But again, cricket was a big, like with a lot of people, it played a big role in my life. I played cricket, but not to any significant level. The usual, so my school did not have cricket. So it was a convent
Mhm.
school which had only football. Funnily enough, they introduced cricket the year after I like passed out for some reason. That was my interest in cricket. But of course, I had an elder brother who now lives in the U.S. in near Washington D.C. He's been there for many years. So he was this crazy cricket fan in the sense like he went beyond just watching and playing, and like he knew a lot about. And this is back when there was no internet, but I don't know how he picked up all these things. He always knew a lot more than most other people. So that's where that interest to go beyond that cricket like really came into my life. But my parents were very very good with cricket and me. They let me like bunk school all the time. I would bunk school and go to like watch test matches all 5 days, and they never had an issue with that. So that really helped, and I was never stopped from staying up late to watch cricket. Or yeah, we was very crazy about cricket, even though we had other interests. It was just like, yeah, now when I think about it, it was, yeah, a bit too much cricket back then, I think. Yeah. Maybe that's where the seeds of this
Yeah.
in journalism were there. But again, at no point
Right.
did I
Right.
ever consider cricket journalism and all that.
So how did the whole
Mhm.
journal? I mean, how did you got into the whole journalism space?
Well, it's an interesting story. I during that early 2000 phase when I just just before I graduated and all that, that's where I started growing my hair. I dabbled in with a lot of heavy metal music. I used to have this silly band,
Oh,
we played in colleges and stuff. We were never too good,
Yeah.
but we
Yeah.
were okay. We got a couple of good reviews here and there. So I used to be the vocalist first.
Yeah.
We used to cover what like Megadeth and Iron Maiden and like all
Oh
sorts of
wow.
thrash metal stuff, Slayer and all that. And then
Yeah.
then this guy in my band said, no, we need to be like Megadeth. So I couldn't play the guitar, so like my vocalist role was gone. So just randomly I picked up the drums. Like it helped that I grew up in a South Indian family which was heavily into music, classical music. So I learned a lot of instruments as a child. So I learned the tabla, the violin, and all. So the tabla helped me with the drums. So long story short, so like along with heavy metal music came a lot of lifestyle choices, which maybe now looking back I overdid without getting into details. And so I did kind of lose my way in life. I'm very like honest enough to say, but and cricket journalism just happened by chance, man. Like someone just said, my parents were worried about me because my brother had already gone off to the US. I was in my 2021, not doing much in life. So and like I said, making a lot of bad choices. So they just got a little worried, and someone suggested cricket journalism. Like, your son has so much interest in cricket, and I dabbled in a little bit of writing here and there for I never considered myself a writer, never ever. So it just someone suggested there's this Asian College of Journalism in Chennai. Why don't you send your son there? And they were more than happy to just get rid of me for a year, and I was also more than happy to just leave that space I was in, headspace, just where I was in life. Give Bombay a break and give myself a second chance in life. That's really how I thought about it. And that second chance is still continuing. That happened in 2007. I went there. It was it's quite an interesting journey getting into it. Never planned it, never really thought about it. Indian Express was just something I picked purely because I liked the guy who came and interviewed us. I had I'll be very honest with you. I had no idea who used to write for the Indian Express. I knew Harsha Bogle used to have a column in there, which I used to read on and off, but again, not very invested in it. I didn't know Indian Express is a good paper. Times of India is a paper, where I might not get too many opportunities. I knew nothing like that. I just said, I'll go with the flow. And like I said, I'm still going with the flow.
And then how old were you when you graduated?
So all this is happening around 21, 22. So I finished my journalism. So I went to this ACJ when I was 22. So I don't know, you pass out of there, whatever. I got the certificate when I was just around 20. And I joined the Express. I remember exactly a week, or I became officially a journalist a week after I turned 23. So this is in 2008.
Right. You remember your first interview?
Oh, very good question. And you'll be very, very surprised when I tell you the name of the person I interviewed first, because I love talking about it. So this was my second day at the job. So the first day I go in, and this is when the first ever IPL was coming to an end. This is May 15th of 2000. So my boss and all were very busy, preparing for the final and all. So I remember we used to have 6 or 7 people on the desk. So the senior guy called Peter Pierce, who's now in Canada, he just sent me on a chess assignment, to Goregaon from my office. And I had no idea, I knew how to play chess, but a little bit here and there, but I had no idea how to cover chess. And this is again an important lesson I tell to a lot of people who just look at you covering test matches and say, "Mujhe bhi tera jaisa banna hai." But you don't really want to live my life, honestly. I would not advise that on anyone, at least what I was doing then. But also, it's not you just jump and next day you're covering test cricket. It's you do everything. It depends a lot on right time, right place, who you're working for, who your boss is, a lot of things. So I covered chess. So I didn't interview anyone there because I got so confused. There were a lot of people playing chess. So the next day they sent me to MHA Stadium, the hockey stadium. I very vividly remember Dhanraj Pillai tournament or something like that. And guess chief guest of that, and that was the opening day. There was the chief guest there, and the first person I interviewed was Jackie Shroff.
Oh, wow.
Oh, Jaggu Dada.
Yeah.
People know me as some cricket writer now, but I did a fair job. I asked him about his interest in hockey and all that. He told me stuff So my office was quite not impressed. They were just didn't he want to be a sports journalist? Why is he interviewing Jackie Shroff on his first day? So he was my first interview. Who would have thought?
Okay.
All my initial stories there were very few cricket stories. So I did covered a lot of local basketball, call it destiny. I had a knack of finding these people who had this story where people had the underdog, right? I remember the second or third story was this basketball referee who had gone kind of lost his way in life, and his family had given up on him or something like that. So I wrote a story on him, and 3 days later he called me and he he was in tears. He was like, "Oh, aapke wajah, like someone read your story and like my they passed it on to my mother and like we were patched up and all that." I was like, "Wow, that's pretty cool." Like, yeah, I didn't know journalists could do that for all the bad blood we get in India. But like, yeah, so so those were seriously my first few stories, and yeah, that's literally how I began my career.
And then when you interview, this, I mean, a lot of people that you admire. So how do you take the fanboy out of Bharat when writing something?
You know what? It's a personality thing. Like, I think I'm just naturally not overawed by anyone or anything, or like I was never a fanboy. Like, I don't know why. I'll tell you the only time I've ever gotten emotional or overawed by seeing someone like a celebrity, and I'm not trying to be cool here. It is seriously the fact. Is in 2007 when Iron Maiden came to India for the first time. Like, it was the first. So they played at Palace Gardens in Bangalore, and it was like, so a bunch of us, like, all guys with long hair, black t-shirt, guys and girls, we got into this train. Like, it was amazing. There were like 4 compartments filled of like these black shirted, long haired men, like smoking and drinking and playing guitar. And it was an amazing train journey. And I'll never forget the pantry car, like, guy who was working in the pantry came up to me and he asked me, "Saab, aap log koi shaadi mein ja rahe ho kya?" Like, I was like, "Kaun aisa shaadi mein kaun ja?" So anyway, but like when we reached that place, and it was a long day. It was a warm day. It was like February or March. We were there in the heat for a long time. And like around 7:30 that evening, Nico McBrain, the drummer, just appeared on stage from nowhere. And I'm not kidding. I saw grown men cry. Like, I wasn't crying, but I was also, like you had like goosebumps, and they didn't leave till. And that's the greatness of Iron Maiden as well. Sorry, I'm digressing, but because they are such a great stage show band, or they always have.
Yeah.
That is the only time I've really been like over, because I grew up as this mad West Indies fan. Like, West Indian cricket was everything for me. I mean, I really did not care about Indian cricket and all. Like, I won't get into the details, but I've written about this as well in the past. My mother had to force my dad to buy a new second TV at home, so that because I used to get beaten up by my brother, at times by my father, because I would support West Indies against India. I would celebrate whenever Sachin got out. I would celebrate Lara boundary. I in fact went to the Wankhede in '94, carrying to the India West Indies Test match. I didn't know, again, like this cousin knew about my West Indian love, so he made this poster for me, which was never allowed inside Wankhede. The security guard threw it away because it said Lara Khiladi Sachin Anadi, because I think that's around the time the movie had come. So yeah, I think I was 9 or 10. I would have been lynched maybe. Like, I think he was protecting me. So I was that kind of. So as a result, like, no, I was never, I don't know, overawed by Indian cricket, I guess. Like, my ex-boss, Sandeep Dwivedi, who's one of the best sports editors the world has ever seen, had told me this very, very early on. I mean, again, he was telling someone else this, not me. So I overheard this. He was like, if you want to be a successful cricket journalist in India, be a fan of cricket, never a cricketer. And which I truly believe in. Because I'll tell you, my reality is not hanging out with Virat Kohli or MS Dhoni. My reality, and I would tell myself every day when I would drive back from my office in Nariman Point to Ghatkopar, when I would turn into that little gully, like, with the tiny gully, and I go into my tiny apartment where I grew up. That is my reality. Like, my real friend, my real world is my real friends who I grew up with, and like, or my wife or my mother or my genuine friends.
Let's chat about your writing process a bit. So you write a lot about how cricketers go about practicing in nets. What do you usually observe when you follow them in the nets, and do you chat with them post the practice session?
I mean, look, the 2 separate questions. I'll talk about observation. If you want to be a storyteller in life, you have to be observant. Whether you write or you make movies or you talk about it, or if you just tell stories to people. And the reason is often the story, like, the overall gist of the story is one thing, but what makes every story special are those like very minute little observations, like those little things that matter. So I always tell writers, like, so once you're a writer, your brain cannot go to sleep ever. So whatever you're doing, whether you're watching a movie, whether you're just going on a walk with your dog, or whether you're just driving, you always keep observing, because you never know what will come handy to you when you're writing. I have this I've developed this habit over the years, like whenever I hear something interesting, right, like just randomly I just say that goes into a copy somewhere, that line I always say. So that's almost like a trigger for my head to, it might sound very like cool and all, but it's just like very simple. It's just a trigger for my brain to remember, like kind of lodge that thought, like, so that I can use it in the future at some point, like, that. So that observation never goes. So while I'm in the nets, I mean, I know people talk a lot about, like, Bharat is in the net. I've always done it, and I always look at it this way. Like, if you are interested in cars, if you're really, really interested in cars, wouldn't you want to go to the workshop and see how it's made? Like, how it's like built, what goes in where. And the nets is like a cricketer's workshop. I mean, that's where he or she works on their skill. So if you see something in the match, I tell a lot of people who do analysis, and like, I always tell them, I ask them out on net dates. Like, I'm like, come and stand with me in the nets. Not because I'm going to tell you anything special. Like, isn't it your responsibility to see them in action, working on their skills? And then when you see them executing it, like, you can connect it to that. Like, obviously, like, I get linked with Steve Smith a lot. The only reason is because Steve Smith spends that much time in the nets, really. Like, yeah. So, but I've reached a point with Steve Smith, and one thing I realized is all great people, right? Whatever their field is, like, one thing I realized is they'll have one thing that they do, or there'll be this repetition that they'll follow with something that they do. And now I've watched so much of Steve Smith that I tell people, like, it's almost like a trick thing. I'll say, look, I won't look at his feet. I'll just look at the bowler and I'll tell you where his feet hit, and they'll be like that. And it's seriously like a party trick game. It is nothing special. It's just because I've observed him, and it's more about him than me. I'll give you a great example of the things that you pick up from the nets. So before the Ashes began last year, I was in Birmingham, Australia were having their first big net. Like, it was raining outside. So they went into the indoor net, and all the Aussie press was there. Like, everybody was there. They were there and they were watching it, like, but like talking amongst themselves, watching it. And then at one point they all said, man, I'm hungry. And they all started leaving. So I said, no, that's fine. I like to stay till the end, like, because what if you observe that? And the only reason I'm observing is I want, like, tomorrow when I write, I just want a lot of content ready with me. So Steve Smith, like, yeah. So I stayed back and he finished his net session, and they were all packing up, and he just walked randomly away, and someone just asked him, like, all good, Smudge? And he just looked up. And so the viewing area at Edgbaston in the indoor nets is like, you're standing upper, and like, the nets are in. And he didn't look at me and say anything. He just looked up randomly. I was the only one there. And he just said, better tomorrow, better the day after, better the day after that.
Yeah, those golden words.
Yeah, I was like, that's a bloody good intro. Like, like, yeah. And that became my intro. And then thankfully you can write all that, man.
Interesting.
Chasing stories. How did the fascination for Patrick Patterson happen?
I mean, see, Patrick Patterson always stands out as that story that, like, and of course, like, I really treasure it. It's like, it's a very, very special story, very close to my heart because of the man also. Like, yesterday I called him, and after 3 years of staying in touch with him, after being like the only person who he really speaks to, I heard him laugh for the first time, like, and because I told him, what, like, all these people are, like, saying good things about you. Like, this is a great thing, like, so he was like, oh, really? Like, I'm so touched. And I said, like, I think just say something. I'll just, like, tweet it. Like, yeah, of course, he does not know what Twitter is. It took me like half an hour to explain to him. Like, how will you put it across to them? Like, how will they know? How do they come and tell you all these things? So I had to, like, explain the whole concept of social media to a person who is completely unaware. But like, but he was just one of the many stories, as not just me, but most journalists, right? And it's a very Indian journalist thing. When you go on a tour, most of us will prepare and go, like, all these, I'll try to interview these players, or like, I'll try to do these stories. Most of us do. Some do it more than the rest. So this fascination of going beyond the usual and finding something, I guess it also helped that I worked for a newspaper who encouraged you to do it. Like, they would give you the space and the freedom to do it. Like, even though you had to do other things. So the Patrick Patterson thing is very, like, so I grew up at a time in his career. Yesterday, actually, we joked about it. He was like, wait, you were born in 85. He told me this as well. He said, like, so I debuted a year after you. Like, so where did you even see me? Like, I said, no, I remember seeing you very briefly. It was like that's kind of like your team is what made me fall in love with the West Indies. And this is like the West Indian team that was losing, by the way. Huh? Like, 91, 1991, it already started, the downfall had started.
Yeah.
So, like, so it just stuck with me, man. Like, so this guy, I think it has so much to do with the alliterative name as well, right? Patrick Patterson. And then it had this enigmatic, like, he was fast, he was scary, he was like, so you always heard this throughout your cricket, like, whatever, cricket watching period. And then again, when you enter journalism. And then when I went to Jamaica for the first time, I just, like, was curious to find out what happened to him. And that's how really the search began. And then in 2013, when I went, it went to the next level where I managed to find his parents, and like they also did not know. So that made me even more curious. And then in 2017, of course, like, like a crazy chain of events led me to, like, I just kept, I told Gaurav as well, I met such, as much as fascinating as it was to meet Patrick Patterson and like as emotional as it was, but the range of characters I met, like leading up to him, were equally like amazing. Like, like where do you get all these kind of people like in one sphere, like, in one space? It was just like,
this could easily be a movie script.
No, seriously. Yeah.
So how did you move to Australia of all places?
Oh, so that is completely has a lot to do with my wife. So my wife is a special needs teacher, and I'm not saying this because she's not even here. She's at school, by the way. So I'm not earning brownie points when I say that she's an extraordinarily special person, because I think all special needs teachers themselves are great, but special needs teachers are just like, they're cut off a completely different cloth. Like, they deal with kids. Like I tweeted recently, I said that I've never seen my wife, or for that matter, any special needs teacher, look at a child and say, oh, he or she can't do it. The first thing they'll say is, okay, I'm going to find a way of getting her to do it, or him or her to do it. And so she was a special needs teacher in Bombay she worked in 2 different schools for 6 or 7 years. And she was doing really well. And I met her in that journalism college. So like, things falling into place. Like, yeah. So she tried journalism, but she never was interested. Then she jumped to special needs or like becoming a special educator. She did extremely well, like extraordinarily well in her career, but she never had a degree. So, and how it is in India, like if you don't have an academic qualification, however good you are at what you do, except in journalism, by the way, you don't need any degree of, So, as a teacher, so she was doing really well, but she wanted that degree, like, she wanted to go and study. And I came here to Australia in 2014-15 for the tour, the Philip Hughes tour, the first time I came here. And my wife, I was here for 2 months. So the Test series and the Tri-Series before the World Cup. And then she came and joined me here for like a few weeks during her Christmas break. And like we roamed around, and, it's just like one of those things. She really liked Australia. And then we just decided, okay, fine. Once we went back and we'll try to mostly it was to do with her. I just wanted her to get a degree overseas. And I saw her having a bigger scope overseas. I shouldn't say we saw her having a bigger scope. I am not patting myself on the back here. But that's how it started, really.
Speaking of the first time when you came during the 2014 series, Dhoni ruined your date night with your wife.
Oh, man, I'll never forgive him for that. Yeah. And it was not even the first time. So in 2011, just after the World Cup win and all, the Indian Express decided to come up with a book. I don't remember what the title was. It was basically from 2001 to 2011, from the VVS Lakshman Test match to the World Cup win. That book. And a lot of us wrote chapters, like the Express guys, the cricket writers. Chapters. And then they decided that Dhoni would write the foreword, or Dhoni had to write the foreword. And for some reason, I was nominated to be the guy who would chase Dhoni all around the world, convincing him to write the foreword. This is back when there was no real equation. So, and for 8 or 9 months, that's all I did. Wherever I covered a match, I would finish my report, and while all other journalists will go and have a drink or go for a meal, I would rush to the team hotel just to get that 2 minutes with Dhoni saying, "Aap likh do na, forward likho na. Aap kuch socha forward ke bare mein?" So that went on for a while. And then I remember in 2000, so that same year, 2011, the team was leaving for Australia, Indian team. So the last ODI was in Chennai. So I was there, and I remember him, Dhoni, and his wife. Dhoni didn't play the ODIs, but he was coming to Chennai to go fly out to Australia. So he walked into the hotel lobby, and I was there with my wife because my wife's parents used to live in Chennai at that point. And we had just been engaged; we're not married yet. So he walked in, and I just looked at him and I said, "My bhai, ye dekho, Isha, my fiance." So he was like, and there were a lot of people there. And he was like, "Yeah, okay." He just like smiled, and then I said, "Abhi fiance hai, wife banegi ki nahi mujhe pata nahi, because all I do is like chase you looking for like that." Bloody forward. So it's all up to you. Like, I remember everybody, including Sakshi, look at Mahi very funnily. Okay, what is this? Why is this guy accusing you of? What is he accusing you of? So, yeah, anyway, and then he just laughed it off and went away.
I wanted to understand what was your reaction when Penguin approached you to write the book, right? And how did it happen, right? Is it primarily because you guys share the same hairstyle?
I don't know, man. Like, yeah, maybe. No, actually, see, his hair quality was never as good as this. Like, come on, guys, come on. So he, like, so the way the book happened was Penguin just, so like any other Indian cricket writer, I'd written a lot on Dhoni and like, whatever. Maybe I had written in a series of long, like, form pieces, like at that stage. So maybe they read it. I have no idea. And then there was one piece I wrote about his keeping during the 2016 IPL. When I think you guys will remember when he stuck his leg out like that.
Yeah.
Pythagoras of wicket keeping or something like that. So very like scientific piece I wrote about his keeping. So so Radhika Marwa, who's since become a very good friend of mine, who I'd never heard of till that point, she sent me a Twitter direct message saying, my name is Radhika, like, I'm from Penguin, and we want you to write a book. So my first reaction was, main likhunga, mujhe bol rahe. Like, I never, like, people have said, like, you anyway write long form pieces, you should write a book and all that. But I was too lazy, and it just seemed like too much work, which it is, like, to do. Like, and then I never gave it much thought. Like, I never thought about it seriously. So when they approached me, my first reaction was like, yeah, I don't know. Like, yeah, maybe. Like, people have been saying I should write a book, but on Dhoni during a year when his movie is going to come out, like, what will I write? Like, in a sense, that's the thing. That's why you'll always see a lot of cricket journalists or journalists in, like, not always be okay with attempting a book, because our first thought is like, yaar, already itna likh diya hai, and he's still an active cricketer, aur bhi uske upar likhna padega. So how do I differentiate that from what I put in the book? So it's always a challenge. So that was my first thought. And she came to Bombay, and I was very reluctant. Like, I met her, but I was like, oh, no. Like, I know, what can I write? I don't want to write biography. I was like, I was in full defensive mode. I was like, nahi chahiye, nahi, main nahi likh sakta hu. I don't have anything to write. But like, full credit to her. She kept pushing me, and she said, like, okay, fine. If you had to write a book on him, what would it be about? I said, like, I gave full like high fundas. Oh, I'll like maybe unravel his enigma. Basically, I was trying to like shoo her off. I was like, aisa kuch bolunga to, like, very like intangible, very abstract. She'll think that chade kaam ka nahi hai. Like, we came here like uska kahani likhega, isko kuch unravel karna hai. That was seriously my first thought. But she actually really liked the idea. And then she's like, no, that'll work. So will you please write a book proposal, and like, we'll get it done. So I did write the book proposal. Like, my then colleague and dear friend Sriram Veera said, like, just do it, man. Like, what do you have to lose? Like, yeah. So like the Bharat Sundaresan of 2020 would have not even given it a thought, because right now I believe you should just say yes to everything. Like, who knows? Like, just like give it a shot. Like, back then, I don't know, for whatever reason, I wasn't so comfortable. Yeah, the reason I chose to write about start the book with the hair was, I just thought I wanted to develop that connect with, again, right? Like, I keep going back to the same, my logic of writing. It is almost like painting a picture. Like, it's almost like showing a movie to someone through words. Like, you guys might laugh at me, but I am still a very big fan of pro wrestling. I don't watch much of it these days, but I've been fascinated by the business of it, like, how it works, and the storytelling component, like, how they drag you can call the wrestling part of it fake or whatever, but the storytelling component, like I have always been fascinated by it.
You remember your first interaction with Dhoni when you met him the first time?
Yeah, I mean, my first interaction would have been, I mean, again, I'm not like one of those journalists. I don't remember so much about like, how many matches I've covered. Like, there are a lot.
Right.
Again, there's no right or wrong to it, but like, the first time I saw him as a journalist was, of course, that press conference I told you before the India-England ODI. Maybe the interaction would have been, it would have been some silly interaction somewhere, man. I'm sure it was 2000, maybe that same year. The next time whenever I covered an international match. Again, I think we connected in the sense, not like he's my friend or like I've gone out for a meal with him, but it just randomly, like, we would bump into each other and he would always smile and like say something, like, so, or I would say something and he's always been amused by me. This is how I describe our relationship. There's nothing more than that. It's not like he respects me, likes me, nothing like that. He's always been amused by me. I always say something ridiculous to him, like, or he'll say something like ridiculous to me from the beginning. And then that whole 2011 period when I was following for the book is when, like, for the foreword for the book is when we really like got on, like, the sense, like, I would keep complaining to him, like, kya yaar, main aaj khana bhi nahi khaya yaar, kuch to bolo na yaar. Like, see, this was not for my own book, right? So this is like my office had given me this duty, and he would just laugh and say something silly and go away. So
and Dhoni would never say no.
He doesn't say no. That's the biggest problem. Dekhte hain, he'll say like dekhte hain, or he'll say that nahi, Sahi साहब को पहला देना पड़ेगा तो ही मैं दे सकता. Some ridiculous excuse he would give, like, so he'll never say no.
Wrapping up the whole conversation around journalism, like, does it ever suck that people always want to talk to you about other people?
Like, in the sense, like, about cricketers, or just
like about Dhoni, about Patrick, and not about Bharat.
Yeah. That's why they learn very early on when they come to talk to me about other. They get to hear a lot about me. No. It's I mean, but see, that's again, right. It goes back to the point of that's how it'll always be, because we are always writing about celebrities, right? We are always writing about, and it's been a great learning, not just by living in Australia. When you travel, right, the cultures are so different. Like here, in fact, like if a cricketer or any sports person treats himself as a celebrity, they have something called the tall poppy syndrome in Australia. They don't like people like that. They like people like the Aaron Finches, like, who are very grounded, who they can relate to, like, who's like, he's just a mate, he's just a bloke like us. Those are the kind of people they relate to. But then in India, it's completely different. Like, in fact, if there is someone who's very relatable, people are like, no, but I want to live vicariously through him. Right, I want to. So you will always be asked about like other people. It's just something like you said, it's like being asked for tickets, right? Like for IPL matches, which I've never got, unfortunately, for anyone. It's something. It's just how do you call it? It just comes with the job.
Let's move to the final segment. We've just put together a few rapid fire questions. So whatever comes to your mind first, go for it. Yeah. So, top 3 uncapped players you're looking forward to in this season of IPL?
Oh God, tough question, man. Like, before I get started, I went through the IPL squads recently, like, and because I haven't covered domestic Indian cricket for 2 years, some names I was like, Prince Balwant Singh. Like, I mean, I was like, who is that? Like, I've never heard that name. So I'm really looking forward to seeing Prince Balwant Singh just for the name. I really want to see what. I was speaking to a colleague who's writing a piece on Devdutt Padikkal, and I really was like, you guys should read the story once it's out, because it's a very non-classical Indian story. It's not like paisa nahi tha, kuch nahi tha, and it's not a rags to riches underdog story. If anything, it's the other way around. Who else? Well, I am in Australia, so I have to take an Australian name as well. I think Josh Philippe. Everybody here seems to be raving about him.
Yeah.
So. Even though I'm an Alex Carey man, being like South Australian and all, like go Redbacks. But like, I think Josh Philippe could be one. I'm sure I'm missing out on some extraordinary names.
A few upcoming journalists that we should look at.
Yeah, I don't want to answer that question. I don't know. Like, see, it's a very, I think everybody is right now. Okay, I'll put it this way. I won't be like boring. So see, without being biased, I think we have a couple of guys in CricBuzz who are really, really good. Kaushik Rangarajan is a like, because his understanding of not just cricket but just the industry, I think, is really great. I mean, he's not that young; he's like 5 years younger than me, but he's
Right.
still like an up and coming guy. Like, watch out for him. But that's the thing, right? These days there are so many like non-traditional mediums for journalism that any story can pop up anywhere, and like, it reads good, and it tells me a lot about that writer. So I'll just tell you this, put it this way, I'm being extremely useless with this question, but what I look for in good writing is, if any writer, whoever it is, if he can take me to that spot, right? If he can, like, I wrote Shashank Kishore, I know really well. His recent piece on KM Asif, it was so good because I could completely picture that scene happening in front of my eyes.
Right.
And those are the
Right.
pieces that really stand out for me. But again, there are such
Yeah.
amazing young boys and girls, like, writing on sport.
Got it. Got it. Couple of bouncers coming your way. So
Okay.
MS Dhoni or Patrick Patterson?
I think Patrick Patterson. Yeah. Definitely Patrick Patterson. Yeah. See, the story was one thing, man. But the joy I derive from just knowing him is, because I'll tell you guys something. Like, there are some days when he calls me and he's in a very, very bad spot. Like,
Yeah.
he almost asks me to tell him why he shouldn't give up on life. And I'm no psychologist, I am no psychiatrist, I have no experience in this. I just like to talk. But I spend half an hour just telling him something, like, just telling him. And it's not like I tell him, oh, you were so great, you did this, you did that. Nothing. It's just like, yeah, that's fine, but tell me why I shouldn't, why should I live anymore? And I spent 20-25 minutes telling him why he should, he's just a person. And that conversation will end with, okay, fine, yeah, okay, you make a point, I'll continue living. And that brings me more pleasure than people saying, oh man, Bharat, you wrote this piece, it was so good. Yeah, that's great, like, that's professional joy. But that's why Patterson will always be more special to me, because I thought I could bring what change have I brought in Dhoni's life, man.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure
Fair
some
enough,
joy
fair
bit here, but like, no, I'm just saying that's why it matters more to me.
Bharat, as a drummer or a writer?
Drama any day, man. Oof, I miss being on the stage. Like, yeah, I cannot tell you. Like, even though I played like only a few gigs, like, we weren't very famous and all, but that thrill you get, like, oh man, first, like, before drummer, when I was the vocalist, and first show there was a mosh pit. Ah man, nothing can, no story, no, like, you can say whatever, World Cup final, yeah, whatever, you were there, you did. ठीक है, अच्छा, great, but nothing can ever, like, that's why I love the camera even now. Like, if you put a camera in front of my face, I don't mind the camera. I talk, I do. Performing. I love performing. So.
Right. IPL or BBL?
IPL. Yeah. I mean, I haven't covered too much of the Big Bash League. I watched one game of the Big Bash League. Actually, I watched only one game from the ground. Like, it was as a fan, not a fan, sorry. Bought a ticket and sat in the stand just to understand. This is like 2 years ago, last year. And it taught me a lot. Like, I was telling someone the other day as well, why the BBL has never taken off. Like, I got it, like, by just spending like half an hour there. And I was like, shit, I got it. This is because Australia cannot consume sport as anything but sport. IPL mein kahan hota hai? Yes, it's like, I don't know, but I think what the IPL has done to cricketers, cricket journalists, is like, you can't even start to think about it. It's just something else. Like, it is just, in so many ways, without the IPL, I don't know how cricket would have survived in this pandemic.
And just following up to that, Australian cricket or Indian cricket?
That's a tough one. Like, see, Indian cricket made me. Like, I'm a very loyal person. I am Indian. Like, I am Indian. I grew up in India. Yes, I live in Australia. I enjoy covering Australian cricket. It's a very different challenge. It's very different. But like, it's like, when I was told I have to go and cover the Indian tour of New Zealand, I was excited because I'd never been to New Zealand. But like, there is that link that you have with your own people, with your own team, right? Or not your own team. Like, I am here because I covered Indian cricket.
Harsha Bhogle or Adam Collins?
Oh, God. That's not a fair comparison even, I would say. So we have like very different equations, like Hollow and I, and Harsha and I. Like it's very different. Like the one thing we do share in common, like neither of them take me seriously, so I can say whatever I want both. Like yeah, and they don't get like too upset about it.
Dhoni as a CSK captain or India captain?
India captain. Like I think definitely as India captain. I mean, he's done great things with CSK and all that, but it's been like a very similar format that he's followed over the years. I mean, some of the things he's done with the Indian team are just like, because also, again, he's gotten to captain India in 3 very different formats in like in tournaments, bilateral series. Like, so of course, he's been able to like show off his like captaincy skills a lot more with India, because it's just like so much more variety, right? Whole thing, So Dhoni as CSK captain, I mean, he is restricted to just one league, one format, that same 14 matches and plus like whatever. So
one last question. So India is touring Australia. What's your prediction for the next series, the Test match specifically?
First of all, I don't even know where it's going to happen. Like, it's just right now, even this afternoon, there's been some doubts about is it Brisbane, is it Adelaide? Will India come? Will India go? It's all up in the air. But if that series does happen, I think Australia will win that series purely because it just got too much riding on it, and I think it'll be very difficult for any team, because if you think about it, all these guys would have already been in a bubble for 2 months, and then to break that bubble and to travel all the way from the UAE, because they'll come directly from the UAE here. They won't go back to India. They're not going to see their own bed for the next 4 or 5 months. And even if I'm not saying they won't win even if they win a test match, to have that, to keep that for 4 months, for 4 test matches, especially in like, in today's scenario, it's going to be very, very difficult for them. Like, so I think Australia has the edge.
And like one last question. So before we end, like, do you want to share a bit about your podcast that you started?
Yes, of course. Like, so
with Anand
Vasu. There might be other podcasts coming up as well. Just putting it out there with other people.
Oh, lovely.
Maybe,
this is where you heard it first.
Yeah, this is where they heard it first, with a very senior Australian. Not a cricketer, but I won't give more details. There might be a pro wrestling podcast as well.
Wow.
Which will be a very
sounds interesting.
Indian pro wrestling, So it is with another. I can't take his name because I think he might get into trouble. But he's also a cricket writer who I know really, really well. So it's just about 2 boys growing up in Bombay in the early 90s and discovering wrestling. So it's all about before the Attitude Era. So it's all the Ric Flair. And that period, So that's the whole thing. But with the one with Anand Vasu, well, of course, we go back a long way. We've known each other for a long time. I, in fact, met Anand Vasu for the first time before I became a journalist. Like, he was with my cousin, and I remember meeting him, with my extremely long hair. And in later years, he would say that I never ever thought we would be colleagues. So, but anyway, so that's how we met for the first time. And then we covered a lot of cricket over the years. And it so happened that he's also very good friends with my wife. He was stuck with me for 4.5 months, or we were stuck with him. You can look at it whichever way you want. And we just thought because he couldn't go back home, he was stuck with the pandemic. So we just thought we have spent a lot of time with each other covering cricket and all that. We'll just pick 20 venues, 20 matches and just talk about it, where it's not about the match, but also the place and the ground and everything. So it's called Pressbox 2020. And 8 episodes are out. We've just taken a little break. We'll be back in, I think, a week's time or so. So,
thank you so much, Bharat, for your time. And we hope that you enjoyed it as much as we did.
I hope I know I digressed a lot. I deflected a lot of your questions, but I hope I got to the point eventually. So, Dana, thank you for having me on. And good luck. You guys are doing well.